Hello, everyone, and welcome once again to the dark but majestic comic book vault. I'm Captain Logan.
And I'm Dan.
And Dan and I are back for another comic book review. Today we're reviewing the epic 12-part Avengers vs. X-Men. And Dan and I both have on numerous occasions said how much we both enjoyed this. And I know some fans haven't really liked this. Some fans have thought it was absolutely fantastic. Dan, when this first came out, the first thing I was excited about, here it is. Here's issue 1. I'm like, I usually hold one up. Anyway, what I was immediately impressed with about this, as it first started going after the first 2 or 3 issues, was that it had so many big name writers on it, and it felt pretty consistent.
Yeah, I was really surprised how consistent they were able to get everyone. There were some things I noticed between the writers, especially Bendis. There was things that were very Bendis-esque in some of the dialogue and things, but it was pretty consistent too. What did you say? Sorry.
I think Aaron too.
Yeah.
Has places where it feels very Aaron, or where one of those guys would write where you could tell, oh, he wanted to do this issue because it featured this character. Yeah,
definitely. I could definitely see Jason Aaron's voice for Spider-Man, especially in the issue where Spider-Man gets his entire issue, which was awesome.
Which was great, yeah. And I just wish it would happen more often in a regular Avengers title.
Yeah, hopefully now that Hickman's taken over, it'll be like that. But the Bendis thing that I noticed was Bendis, a lot of the time in his various titles and things like that, he'll make it very obvious which characters he has opinions about. And he had Iceman saying things like, "Oh, Cyclops, everyone's sick of you," and stuff like that. And I assumed that was Bendis's opinion of the character and his role in the X-Men universe right now.
Yeah, and I thought that came out kind of out of left field a little bit, but maybe made a little bit of sense that he gave that line to Iceman, even though Iceman doesn't figure into this in any other place but right then. He really seems to walk on panel just to say, "I'm tired of you, Cyclops."
Yeah.
But at least it came from one of the original core 5.
The thing that I really liked about this event, as a whole, is the fact that it didn't make one side the clear good guy or the bad guy like Civil War did. It was Civil War and this event claimed that they were going to be totally balanced, and you'd be able to sympathize with both sides sort of completely, depending on what your sort of morality is. And I thought that this pulled it off in a way that Civil War didn't, where everyone's sort of making choices based on their sort of views on the situation, and they all have good intentions, but a lot of them go about it the wrong way. And it's sort of hard to, it's not hard to sympathize with either side, but you could say, oh, the world that Cyclops created is, perfect. He has these good intentions, I'm going to side with him. Or you could be on Captain America's side where, you don't want the world to change and you think Cyclops is going to go out of control eventually. So I could see on both sides where, and even till the end, before Cyclops became Dark Phoenix, he was the one that was sort of pulling back and telling the rest of them to not be bad guys. And I thought it was good that they didn't vilify Cyclops until he was sort of under the influence of the Phoenix completely. The other thing
that was, I completely agree with everything you just said. The other thing that's really good about characterizing Cyclops in that way is that it doesn't just feel like a possession story at that point.
Mm-hmm.
It isn't just this, the Phoenix. Even though the Phoenix is a force and a creature that we know of from before, it still would be very easy, especially for readers that haven't read Phoenix before, to go, oh well, Cyclops isn't responsible for any of his actions because he's got this other being in his body. And I also, by the way, like that's paralleled with Scarlet Witch. And that she has to figure into this not just because of the whole bringing back the mutants thing, but also because what happened to her is similar to what's happening to Cyclops and to the Phoenix Five. But what I really like about Cyclops pulling back then and then actually making the choice to finally go, okay, no more Avengers and all of that, is that he's still Scott Summers. He's not just this evil being now. And you can see that in the way that the others act too, because they don't all act together and they don't all act the same. The Phoenix Five are not like one, being in five bodies. They each deal with the their new possession in different ways, and so Namor is still Namor. You know what I mean? And
Yeah.
it's precisely what I would have expected him to.
Yeah, it makes all of the Phoenix Five sort of get vilified in here, but I think it makes a lot of sense. I think they were very smart in choosing the characters that were possessed by the Phoenix Force. Emma obviously is a character who has a lot of darkness in her past, and she has the capacity to be evil, as we've seen before. So
Colossus lately has also been dealing with having an evil thing inside of him, kind of, because he keeps trying to repress the Juggernaut. So I thought that was good,
yeah,
for exactly the same reason.
Yeah, and then you had Magic, who's connected to the limbo and that demonic thing that she's got going on. I'm not really well versed in how Magic's powers work, but I got the feeling that she struggles with a sort of demonic entity.
I'll confess, she was brand new to me. I'd never even heard of her before.
I've heard of her before because I knew she was Colossus' sister, but I wasn't really sure how her powers worked. But yeah, it made sense for all four of those to go evil in some ways because, Namor has the capacity to be like that too, like you said before. And Cyclops, even until the end, like I was talking about before, like when he kills Xavier, that's hard for him. And he's doing it not because he's evil, he's doing it because he wants to preserve the world that he's finally created in the image that he's been fighting for his entire life. And that makes a lot of sense to me. He doesn't just kill Xavier out of nowhere, like a lot of people who just saw the panel and reacted to it thought it would be. I thought it was very in character, and it was really sad.
It was really sad. One thing I really appreciated about Cyclops is that Magneto figured into this as much as he did. I almost kind of wish we'd seen Magneto more from the beginning of this book. Mm-hmm. And the reason Magneto is so important is because he's been with the X-Men on Utopia for quite a while now. And him... And I got the sense, even though this wasn't really played up story-wise, but I think that you can gather this, if you've read any X-Men at all, between the point where Scarlet Witch, got rid of 99% of the mutants, and now, that Magneto's had an influence on Cyclops. There's no way around that.
Right, yeah.
When they branched off and the team disbanded and Wolverine had his X-Men and Cyclops had his, it's no accident that Magneto stayed with Cyclops' side. I think Cyclops has been inching more and more toward Magneto's worldview, and I don't think even here getting becoming Dark Phoenix like he does, he gets 100% there. But he gets his worldview gets really scary, and it's very close to Magneto's.
Yeah, I was actually talking with Shades about this whole thing not too long ago, and I was saying how I think this characterization of Cyclops in AVX makes 100% sense. You have Xavier, who obviously had such an influence on Scott when he was younger, up until the point where Xavier sort of left the books and wasn't really there to give Scott any guidance, and Magneto filled that void. And you sort of have Cyclops, who's sort of the moderate between them. He's the one that I always saw as being sort of realistic in his worldview at first, before he gets all the power in this, where he doesn't want to kill everybody, all the humans like Magneto does, but he's been fighting for Xavier's dream his entire life, and he knows that that's not necessarily a realistic thing. So he's sort of like, okay, the mutants can be their own species, we'll go off and do our own thing, and we'll protect people, but integrating within society isn't a realistic goal for us right now. And that's what I thought was really interesting about this characterization here, is they took the two philosophies of Xavier and Magneto and mashed them together, and they created a world that was a paradise. I don't know, I really found that to be interesting.
Yeah, and at the same time, you can completely understand why the Avengers don't really want that paradise because they can't trust it. And then, as time goes on, after the Phoenix Five start creating their world Utopia, you start seeing a lot of evidence that you can't trust them. Not just the fact that they're starting to take Avengers prisoner, and that some of them want to kill Avengers, but Cyclops doesn't want to kill them, but also the fact that those weird scenes with Emma Frost, especially where she's got those mutant kids sitting down and she's forcing them to think certain things. Mm-hmm. That's a creepy scene.
Yeah, it is.
It's a utopia, but it's a totally forced utopia, and I really like that example that it isn't just as simple as if you make all the problems go away, people will continue to people will like that so much that they'll continue to fight to make sure those problems go away. It's she wants to be a god, and you have to think happy thoughts, or she'll do bad things to you. Mm-hmm. That's not a utopia.
Right, yeah, and she even does that thing where she finds that guy that hit a flying mutant with his plane when the kid was 13 and kills him at dinner. It's things like that, where it almost seemed like Cyclops didn't know that those things were going on necessarily, but I liked that he was sort of incorruptible until he gained all of the power. He was the guy that was, not doing those things. It was just an example of how Cyclops was trying the whole time, and it's sort of tragic to see him try so hard throughout when Uncanny first began up until now and fail.
That's true. Because Cyclops' vision when they first become the Phoenix Five is to, give everybody unlimited energy and, take away weapons and things. But then after that, he leaves people alone. And all he does as far as setting up rules is just says, we want everybody in the world to continue toward progress and to build great things, and the only thing that we won't let you do is fight each other. Now, of course, philosophically, you can argue with whether or not that's too much control. Certainly, and whether or not you can trust it. But he's not Emma Frost.
No,
he's not saying he's not Namor. He's not putting them on a pedestal and saying that they're better than everyone. He's just saying we have the ability to do the things that humanity can never do. And that's where you're talking about the difference between the way he looks at things and the way Xavier looks at things. Because I always saw Xavier as a character who doesn't actually necessarily think that his dream is possible, but that it's worth his whole life working toward it. That, he doesn't know if he can ever even get there, but on the principle of the thing, he must try, and he must try within the limits of what nature is allowing.
Right.
So there's powers, but he's not going to go any farther than that.
Right. The Martin Luther King analogy that people often say with Xavier is definitely true here, where he sort of strove towards racism being a thing of the past and getting rid of it, but that's not really possible. And Xavier's sort of the same thing, where he's striving towards a goal that you can never accomplish. And I thought
he ultimately ends up being kind of right in that, because he says, "Look, Cyclops, what you want is too easy. There's not enough of a price." And I know from experience that if the price isn't high enough, it probably won't last. And he's right.
Right, and there you go. You have Magneto's, what I would imagine his problem with Cyclops' Utopia is at the end of the day. They didn't really come out and say it, but Magneto goes and gets Xavier to help the Avengers stop Cyclops, and he and Xavier, I think, agree on that level where to achieve either of their visions, a price needs to be paid. And Cyclops is trying to achieve a medium between their two worldviews without paying anything.
Yeah, the difference with Magneto is that he's willing to sacrifice, human lives.
Yeah, yeah.
Mm-hmm. So, let me ask you the question that I'm sure is on everybody's minds after reading this book, and I'm sure there's a lot of differing opinions on this. Do you feel like by the end, Cyclops gets kind of thrown under the bus? Because I agree with you that I really buy his motivations through this. and I wasn't entirely sure that I would when it started. I really questioned it, and then by the end, I did. But just as far as this being a character that I never thought I would see as a air quote supervillain, do you think Marvel should have done this? And do you imagine that it won't be very long before they kind of just sort of conveniently let him go back to business as usual?
I don't know. I don't necessarily see him as a supervillain or thrown under the bus at the end of this, really, because the X-Men end up being right philosophically at the end of the day. I mean, the Avengers win the physical fight, but I think, I mean, it's arguable, but I think personally the X-Men won this. Look at the outcome of this. New Mutants are being born because Cyclops was right. Everything he said about the Phoenix, Hope being possessed, he was right. If the Phoenix had possessed Hope after she was trained, the entire conflict could have been avoided if Captain America stayed out of their business. And Captain America realizes that he has been treating the mutants right, and now he's getting behind the mutant cause, and he's going to be championing the Xavier dream of showing the mutants as good guys publicly with the Uncanny Avengers. So the mutants as a whole race end up in a better place than they were at the beginning of this because of Cyclops' actions.
Yeah, but then, and I guess that's what's great about this book is that we can have a philosophical debate about this in a way that we couldn't with Civil War.
Yeah.
Because I think that you and I, if we wanted to, could sit here and take opposite sides on this. I would side more with Captain America. Than Cyclops by the end of this, when Captain America says, but do the ends justify the means? Was this worth him killing Professor Xavier and other things that he did during this? Because I would make the argument that, yeah, he's right about what the Phoenix's intentions were, which, by the way, I thought was a stroke of genius, by the way.
Yeah.
That the Phoenix only showed up because it wants mutant kind back. That's great stuff, and I didn't expect it. And it's telegraphed from the second page of the first issue of the Zero issue. And by the way, I'm sorry, I'm jumping around. The Zero issue is necessary in this book.
Yes, it was, and
it feels like the first issue. It's not really a prologue. You need it.
Yeah, it definitely sets up Hope and Scarlet Witch as being the two main characters of this. And I think in a lot of ways they are. Definitely, I mean...
Maybe not the main characters, but they're the what am I trying to say? They're the Holy Grail in this, both of them kind of together, you know what I mean?
Yeah, I mean, when you think about it, like in that Zero issue, the stuff that they set up with them, which I think was sort of ironic, you have an Avenger in the position of someone who's hated and feared among her family, and then you have a mutant who is worshipped as a god among her people. The roles are sort of reversed, which I thought was sort of interesting. And you have one of them fighting against, being worshipped. She doesn't want that, while the other one is just desperately searching for acceptance. And they both get it by the end of the story. Wanda's welcomed in by the Avengers, and Hope sort of gets to fulfill her destiny and go off and do her own thing without Cyclops telling her what to do anymore. And I thought that the Zero issue set that up really well. Like, if you didn't read the Zero issue, you wouldn't have, appreciated the final scenes with Wanda and Hope as much, I don't think, because you wouldn't have got the start of those character arcs being set up.
And isn't it cool that kind of juxtaposition between those two characters is kind of played up in smaller ways in other places too? Because I'm reminded of the relationship between Storm and Black Panther, which kind of echoes the Vision Scarlet Witch thing a little bit.
Yeah, it does, definitely.
There's some great stuff going on there, thematically and paralleling these characters, but not just, making it a kind of like a social or philosophical thing, but also just, making it about these characters and pushing them forward. I'm going to go back to my point about what Captain America says at the end of this, because the thing is, Cyclops is, again, he's right about what's going to happen. He predicts everything correctly except for his own part in it. And the question is, when he got the Phoenix power, should he have done anything he did past that point? Sure, you can blame the Avengers for running in and meddling in this in the first place when they could have just let the Phoenix come in, take Hope. Hope would have rejected it, game over. I guess, except that there's also the question of if she needed to be trained before she would have thought to do that. I guess that's a question, but I'm just saying that I think that Cyclops gets corrupted. I think that by the end of it, and I think that he's wrong in how he handles the Phoenix power, because the point of Hope is that she's the only person that is willing to reject that power and let the Phoenix die. And Cyclops isn't willing to do that. He sees a chance to put a Band-Aid on all the problems of the world, and he takes it. So I think he's right at the beginning, but I don't think he's right at the end.
I don't know, because you have Hope reject. If you have Hope reject the Phoenix Force and him not take the power, then the entire mutant race will die eventually, because no more of them are going to be born. You know what I mean? He was doing it in the attempting to save a race of people, and he says that throughout the entire thing. He's like, you people don't understand me. I'm trying to save an entire race of people, and you're standing in my way. You want my people to die? Well, then you're the enemy.
Maybe I'm missing a point of this, and maybe you can explain it to me if there's something I'm not thinking of. Why does he have to take the Phoenix Force before she does?
Well, what happened was Tony Stark disrupted it too, and that.
Yeah, I know that.
And that sort of gave them the power. I don't think they took it willingly. I think it was sort of like, I don't even think they knew that would happen.
Yeah, no, that's true. But I'm sorry, not Captain America. Cyclops didn't have to do what he did after he got the power.
Mm-hmm. True.
You see what I'm saying? That's my point. He didn't have to try to make the world a utopia, and I think that's where he made the mistake.
Fair enough.
He was trying to take the easy way out, and he wasn't doing it the way that Xavier taught him. And I think that's where he made the mistake. So yeah, I mean, Captain America certainly is partially to blame. What I love about Captain America is that he's responsible enough to know that. When you get to the end of the book, he says, "Look, I played my part in this too." The difference is the reason he makes the mistakes he makes is out of ignorance. Captain America has not paid enough attention to mutants over the years, and he recognizes this and apologizes for it in this book. And if he knew more about the Phoenix Force, he may not have done what he did, because really the X-Men's whole side of this is you guys can't expect that you can actually hold the Phoenix. That's really stupid. We can't do that. And so I'm just saying that I think Captain America makes a mistake and realizes what his mistake is, and I'm not sure that Cyclops has, by the end of this, really learned from his mistakes, besides just, of course, he's sad that he killed Xavier. But when he tries to turn it around on Captain America and say that it's a win, for both the Avengers and the X-Men, I was actually with Captain America when he said, now don't try to turn this into a win. You did the terrible things that you didn't have to do. So yeah, I'm siding with Captain America 100% on this, besides the mistakes that he made at the beginning out of ignorance.
See, I don't see Cyclops in the same sort of light as you do, I don't think.
It sounds like you don't, but that's really interesting.
Yeah, because...
But that's why it's a good book!
Yeah, exactly. I mean, Cyclops, I think, got sort of... He heard Magneto's philosophy, and he thought, well, neither of those people have been successful in achieving their goals, and they've been doing this for a very, very long time. And he gets this immense amount of power and sees an opportunity to make the world a better place and have everybody win. And I think that was his motivation. It was, he had good intentions and it didn't work out well.
He did it with 4 people he knew he couldn't trust.
Well, I mean, he worked with what he had,
Yeah.
Cyclops is...
I don't buy it. It was an easy way out, and he should have known it from the beginning.
Fair enough, I suppose.
That's my opinion.
I don't know. Cyclops is always the guy that he does what he has to save the mutants,
But again, I don't see how that's really about saving the mutants, because, what danger were they really in at that point?
Humanity. I mean, no more mutants were being born at that point, and he could have protected them all he wanted, but eventually they would have died out. You know what I mean? Even if he kept them in a bubble away from all the humans, they still would have died eventually.
Yeah, that's true, but him being a Phoenix isn't the thing. I guess what I'm not getting is I still don't understand how him having Phoenix power would have caused more mutants to be born.
It doesn't. He was waiting for Hope to be. He was going to train Hope, and then they were supposed to give the power to her. That was
okay. That's the bit I'm missing. All right, well that makes sense then. Because I was just like, because you kept saying he was trying to protect the mutants, and I'm like, from what? Like I don't understand the difference. But no, you're right. So I get that. One thing I do really appreciate is that Wolverine is kind of like a third side in this.
Yeah.
Is actually finally kind of a loner again.
Yeah, I like that.
I really like that. I mean, he goes off on his own, and he has this third tact, which is, well, we have to kill Hope. And by the way, I think it's a little bit odd that nobody else is with him on that. It seems like somebody would have sided with him on that point.
Yeah, I don't know if I necessarily buy Wolverine's whole shtick with that, though. He's running a school where he's like, oh, we need to protect children, and then in the same breath he's like, we need to kill this kid.
Yeah.
I thought that was kind of strange.
No, that was strange. The reason I'm torn about it is because I think the problem there is with Schism, not with this.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Because the thing is, 2 years ago I could have seen Wolverine doing that.
Yeah, I mean, and he does it in Uncanny X-Force. That was the whole moral dilemma in there. I don't know how that worked out, but I think there was a kid version of Apocalypse that they were tasked with killing.
Oh, yeah, that's right. He's still around. He's actually in a panel in this.
Yeah, I wasn't sure if that was the same one or not.
I think it is.
Yeah.
I might be wrong. I don't know. I'm a little bit fuzzy on X-Men right now. I read the first few issues of the two books after Schism, but dropped off after that. Mm-hmm. So, well, I guess this has turned into more of a philosophical debate than a review, Dan.
Yeah, I mean, there's some other stuff in here that I noticed that was really cool when I was reading through it. Like, I noticed that this was sort of an allegory for how people perceive the coming 2012 apocalypse, and I thought that was really interesting.
I didn't think about that at all. All right.
I did, because when you think about it, like, people have ideas about the apocalypse like it's either something that's coming to destroy us or a transformation in society. And we had this threat in the Phoenix Force that Captain America thought was going to come and destroy us all. And that's the looming threat that, we as people have seen the year 2012 as being as, like, oh, the world's going to end at that point. Some people think that Western society will collapse and we will transform to something else because of a radically different worldview. That's the view of the mutants, and they get all this power through divine intervention, which is another thing people think about, the second coming of Christ and battles between, the devil and Christ. I mean, that's who Hope and Scarlet Witch were. Scarlet Witch was on a quest for redemption. She was outcasted by the powers of that be, like Lucifer. She's a fallen angel, and Hope was this messiah that was supposed to save everybody. I thought that was really interesting, that how they sort of took everyone's ideas about how the world might end this year and incorporated them into the story.
That's a great point. I now feel kind of dumb not having thought of that on my own. But what I appreciate about this is that it can be enjoyed on the level of the giant, crazy comic book event, and that stuff isn't heavy-handed like the political stuff was in Civil War.
Right, exactly. And it's things like that they put in there that make me really appreciate. The writers at this company really know what makes Marvel special, and
they do now. I don't think they did with Civil War.
Right. Yeah, they do now. I'm talking about this group of guys specifically. Mm-hmm. I think they do because Marvel's always been about commenting on real world issues through their stories, and they did that in such a way where they present all these ideas to the reader and they say, okay, you think about it. Like if divine intervention comes and we're able to create a utopia out of the world, would you go with that if there were these repercussions? I thought that was interesting,
If this had been done during the Civil War era, they would have had it so on the nose that it would have been an apocalypse story with apocalypse in it.
Yeah. Yeah, that's true.
We're up on a half an hour. We should probably wrap this up. What did you think about the consistency of the artwork through this? Because of course we had several major writers on this, but we also had several major artists. Mm-hmm. And did you feel like it was very consistent? Did that work, or would you have liked to have seen a single penciler?
I think a single penciler would have worked, but I'm not sure if that would have been realistic to get this out as...
It wouldn't have gotten it out as in 6 months.
Yeah,
sure.
This would have taken like a year.
That's right.
So I think it was a good decision to go with multiple pencilers. I think it would have been better if they went with 3 people that styles complemented each other a little bit better, because going from Romita to Coipel is a pretty stark difference. But I liked...
Yeah, it was jarring.
Yeah, I liked that Romita drew the first act of the story, and then after that, I thought Coipel was going to draw Act 2, but then towards the end, they switched between Kubert and Coipel, like, arbitrarily. I thought Coipel did like 2 or 3 issues, and then Kubert came in. I was like, oh, he's going to be drawing the rest of it. And then Coipel did issue 11 randomly. So yeah. I was like, this is kind of weird. But I don't know. I like all 3 of the artists that were on the book. I think Romita's stuff looked a little bit rushed here and there. But
I don't know if you had what I had with Kubert. There were at least a couple of places where I felt like he was actually channeling Romita a little bit.
Yeah, I thought so too.
Especially the way he draws Iron Man.
Yeah, definitely.
Looks like Romita's Iron Man. I actually had to flip back to the cover and, it's not Romita. What? But I don't know. It was definitely, obvious. I mean, this goes without saying, but it was definitely a really exciting book. It was a lot of thrilling action. And, I did appreciate the fact that you didn't have to read, all the offshoot stuff.
Yeah, some people complained that this was a little bit longer than, they would have liked to have been, but I really appreciated that they kept literally the entire story in the mini. I read some of the tie-ins. Most of them were completely superfluous, I have to tell you, to the main story. Everything that I got... I mean, I kept reading the books that I would normally be reading that tied into this event, and most of them were well written, but you didn't need them to understand the story. So I appreciated that.
What was nice about having this fleshed out in so many issues, and at first I really understood why people were saying that, reading it in issues, because, I mean, it did feel like it went a long time, because, it was 2 issues a month for 6 months, and it was an event. Mm-hmm. But sitting down and reading it all together, I felt like there were a lot of nuances and things that couldn't be in this book if it weren't as long as it was. I feel like a lot of characters couldn't have played in the way that they did. You wouldn't have had the Spider-Man thing. There were a lot of characters that kind of got a moment. And it didn't feel rushed, it felt like it was really part of the story, and it's great because of the title, it's called Avengers versus X-Men. You want most of those big characters to actually play some kind of a role in this, and were this to be done, over several other books, where you had to buy all of them, and it was like maybe a 30 or 40 issue crossover, but you had to read all of them. I mean, they might have been able to flesh out even more, but of course it would have been harder to read because it would have been a lot more expensive for people. So I think this was a really good middle of the road way to tell the story they wanted to tell, the way they wanted to tell it.
Yeah, I think it was really smart doing it in 12 issues like this, but unfortunately, I don't know if you've seen the slits for the hardcover of this.
No, I haven't.
But what Marvel's doing is incredibly stupid.
Uh-oh.
They're collecting the 12 issues, and then they're throwing the 6-issue fight mini into the collection. You don't have the option of not buying it with that yet.
Oh,
and it's $75.
No.
Yeah.
Well, hopefully they will release a soft cover of just the 12 issues or the 13 issues.
Yeah, I mean,
I'm
highly recommending this to people, but if you're waiting for the trade, wait for the soft cover. Unfortunately, Marvel's not putting out a way to buy this in print in a collection that's reasonable right now.
That doesn't make any kind of sense because this has a certain kind of pacing. Mm-hmm. And it reads, I mean, you and I today just sat down and reread this. I don't know if you'll agree with this, but I thought it read like it was intended to be read together.
Yeah, definitely.
And like it didn't want to be interrupted by those other books that were just fleshing out the fights. The thing is, like you said, that's kind of superfluous. It might be fun, but it's almost like just additional reading. You know, it's like a footnote where you go look at a different encyclopedic entry.
Right.
Oh no.
Yeah.
Well, I would suggest that people try to get your hands on the issues if you can then, unless they do put out a softcover of just the 13, but who knows?
Yeah, I'm hoping they do. I mean, you can either get the issues or find them digitally if you guys have an iOS or Android device.
Yeah.
They should all be up on there, but I'd recommend tracking down the back issues for this. I mean, if you like Marvel events done well, like Secret Wars and stuff like that, I think this is in the same vein as that. I think this is probably the best event book Marvel has published since the Quesada era began. I know Alonso's the editor-in-chief now, but this event sort of capped the Quesada era, you know, Bendis being on Avengers and stuff like that, and I think this is the best one.
Yeah, I agree with you. I think so too. The other thing that's nice about the single issues, and I didn't do this with all of them. I might go back and look at some of it, but the issues do have this augmented reality thing if you have like an iPhone or something.
Yeah.
And you can, I don't know if you did any of that, Dan, but you can scan some of these pages, and you can get like behind the scenes pictures. You can see or behind the scenes things. There's like snippets of interviews and stuff. Sometimes they'll show you like rough drawings or pencils and things. I mean, like it's kind of like all the stuff that you would get like in the back of an Absolute edition, but like in your phone. And also it's, multimedia. So sometimes you get video, sometimes you get audio. It's kind of interesting. It doesn't work real well all the time. You have to really line it up right because you have to scan it, with your phone. And so sometimes it's kind of irritating to sit there and try to scan it. But, I might go back and do more of it. I did that with the first two, and then after that just kind of read it, but I might go back and look at it. But anyway, that's kind of, extra stuff, for your $3.99. So that's kind of cool.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, definitely. I was thinking of going and doing that actually at the Death of Xavier panel, especially because there was an AR little symbol there. But I'll have to go back and look through it. That should be some interesting stuff. Especially I want to go back and do the AR on the Spider-Man issue because I feel like that'd be cool.
They put a lot of them in there too. Yeah. It's like there's 4, 5, 6 in issue.
Awesome.
So it kind of feels like it's like special features on a DVD. So it's kind of nice.
Yeah, another, what we get for our $4, throw anything in there that we can. I'm still opposed to, the non-optional digital copy you get for your $4, but
I don't like that either. I think that they would still be charging $4 for these even without that though, Dan.
Right.
Because they were doing that with event books before this.
Mm-hmm. True.
But anyway, well, I really enjoyed this, and I think that there's probably another hour or two of philosophy discussion that could happen with this, Dan.
Yeah, and that's very telling of how good this book is, because usually Marvel events, or just event books in general, aren't like that. They're very plot-driven, and we had a lot to say about the characters, the philosophy, the themes that they're playing with here. I mean, it's a heavy book, yeah. Literally and figuratively, once it's collected.
And I think, you and I just being two different readers, we obviously each got something different out of it, and I learned a lot from you that wasn't going through my head when I read it.
Oh, yeah, so, same here.
It's a great book.
Yeah, highly recommend it to people. I mean, I can see some of the things where people would say they were a little bit ticked, but they were sort of minor things. Like, I heard a lot of people were like, oh, Beast switched sides for like the third time in a year. Between the X-Men and the Avengers, and I can see how that would annoy people, but it's not really that big of a deal to me. I can look past little things like that to enjoy the story. That's not going to ruin the whole event for me. But
yeah, and I completely understand people who are just upset with Cyclops being in this position, and that kind of thing. I have a tendency with things like this to kind of look at it as its own piece and not look at it so much in the scale and scope of the rest of the universe. So maybe as time goes on, I could be more irritated with that depending on what they do with it. But as far as just this as a piece, I think it works really well.
Yeah, and it's not like the Tony Stark Civil War thing where like he was in character before that, and then he became a supervillain for like 6 months or whatever. This was in character, I thought. I've read a good amount of X-Men, and Cyclops is one of my favorite X-Men characters, and I thought this was getting him to this place the way they set it up, it was in character, and they set the event up really well. I mean, there's stuff going back to like Messiah Complex, which happened like 5-6 years ago. That see his characterization in here, so it was really well done.
And didn't you love Iron Man kind of playing Tony Stark's, or not Tony Stark, playing kind of Captain America's lieutenant in this? Yeah. I loved them together.
Yeah, and I mean, Captain America's position in this was very much in character, and I thought it was kind of cool how they pointed out how Cap was sort of acting how Tony acted in Civil War, but...
And Tony's the one that points it out to him.
Yeah, and Captain America, his position in this is completely in character too, because he's sort of he's a soldier, you know, he's a man of action. When he sees a problem, he goes out and solves it. That's his whole thing. So, I don't know. I think everything fell into place really well here. I really enjoyed it.
Well, everybody, thanks a lot for watching the Comic Book Vault. And remember, the Comic Vault is a giant, vast wonderland of comic books that you can donate stuff to if you'd like to. You can either send me things to review or to donate to review, or you can even let me borrow things if you'd like. If there's something you're just itching to see me review, you can send those things to our P.O. Box. That's Geekvolution, P.O. Box 14183, Lenexa, Kansas 66285. Dan, it's always a pleasure.
Oh, yeah. Thanks for having me. It's always a pleasure to be on.
And we'll try to come back to you very, very soon with another review. I'm Captain Logan.
And I'm Dan.
And happy reading.